Hello, it's Mr. Pelargonium, or aka David Taylor. Welcome back to my own channel for a bit of a video. I thought it was about time I did a bit of an update on my own channel here. And we're into April, filming this on the 2nd, Tuesday the 2nd of April. Sun is out, and when I close the greenhouse now, the sun is getting higher. So that means it's actually, when I close up to do a video like this, it is getting really is quite warm in here now. I've just shut up. It's probably, I'm just looking at my thermometer, and it's 25 degrees. That is more or less in the sun, so it's probably in the shade it'll be a few degrees lower than that. But yeah, the days are getting much warmer, and that means that things are beginning to really grow. They're beginning to grow on, and this time of year always really does pose a problem, particularly if you're like me and you've got far too many plants in your greenhouse. I mean, I'm desperate to get stuff outside, and it's still really way too early in the UK to risk putting plants outside. But I have got a couple of really big plants that I'm going to have to park outside during the day so that they do get slightly hardened off. Right, now, something that I have been doing, I have been putting on one or two of my plants. I think I explained that in the Pelargonium Society videos. I mean, only plants realistically that are very desperate to be potted up, i.e. some that are in very small plants. Is a regal, an example of one I've done. This was in a small little dump pot, so it was desperate to be moved on. It was growing, really quite fast, and it desperately needed to be potted on. It was very root bound. So things like that I have been doing. But again, the limitation of space that I've got here before I can begin to move plants out means that I'm pretty limited in what I can actually move up at this point. Now, another thing that I will need to do, because of the fact that the sun is getting quite strong and it does get warmer in here, in a week or two, I will need to think about putting the whitewash on my glass house. And this is something that you need to do. If you've got a glass house in the UK, from about sort of mid-April onwards, the sun can really scorch plants. If you've got plants, any type of plant really, but including pelargoniums that technically like quite warm weather, they can get scorched by the UK sun from about, as I say, mid-April, probably up until early to mid-September. You need to keep the whitewash on, otherwise you will really scorch your plants. Now, one or two of my plants that sort of haven't been stopped too much are just beginning to bloom. So let's have a look at a bit of bloom. I've got a Regal Martin Pope, which has just started to flower. This has always got a lovely bloom on it. Very deep purple, well, reddish purple, very dark. It's always difficult on a camera to get the colouring of this right. But, I'll do my best. Now, I am adding a little bit of magnesium sulfate, or via Epsom salts is the easy name to remember it by. A spoonful in, say, a 10-litre watering can. Just gives those leaves a bit of a boost at this time of year. Darkens the green, makes them, nice and dark and strong looking. And it's something that I do. Don't do it with every watering. It's just when I remember really to put a spoonful of it in. It's certainly made a difference with this plant. This has got a lovely dark foliage. This is being grown on as a standard, so this hasn't been stopped because I want my standard grown plants to grow up tall. So these have just been let be. But anything that hasn't been stopped, I've got a zonal there that's one of my own varieties, just throwing a little single bloom. Trivenum Snowball, that one. A very vibrant white, and it doesn't go pink at all. Stays solid white. Really good one, much like a double version of it, which I've got there, which is a Colin Martin. Another one of my own varieties, but they do very well. Now, for the Pelargonium Society annual show, which is being held at Wisley this year on the 22nd of June, I'm hoping to get this big boy plant to the show. It's a giant standard that I've got, but you'll notice there are 1 or 2 blooms coming. That's because I tried to sort of even it up as best I could with the growth, so I didn't stop every single stem. So any blooms that are coming on the unstopped stems, I'm just taking off. It won't hurt them. I just wanted it to balance off a little bit more because some of the stems were much shorter than some of the others. Ugh. So I only stopped the longer stems. There's a couple of blooms. I just want those to come off because I want the plant to really put all its energy into growing now at this point. There's another one that's just coming up. Now, I'll only probably do this for, well, for the rest of April. But once we get into May, I'll just let it bloom. And it'll be then just a question of seeing what it looks like come the show day. Now, one of the problems that we can have at this time of year is deciding how to get the watering right. Because if we get a few cool days, you know, and you've done a water and the plants begin to sit in water, they really will not like it because Pelargoniums, as I've said many, many times, really dislike a wet root ball. So when the weather, I think really all you can do at this time of year is look at your weather forecast. If there are a lot of cool, wet days forecast, go easy on your watering. Otherwise, because you really do not want your root ball to sit in just water, effectively for a while. But you do have to be careful. The springtime can be a real problem time of year for getting your watering right, but it's better to water less than water more. That's the important thing I think I'm trying to get over. Right, so I've just taken the camera off its stand. Let's just have a little look round. Variegated Mr. Wren. I've got some good growing tall standards here. These are growing actually quite nicely. These were obtained from Fibrex right at the very end of last season when they were closing down. And that is almost a metre high now. That's grown very well. What is that plant? That's a Caroline Schmidt, very old common variety. But I want to get a standard of that. I've got a few older ones. That's my cat having a meow. Do you want to come in, Alf? She doesn't want to come in, obviously. Now, one plant that we can have a look at. This was my Orset seedling, my one successful seedling that I got from Orset last year. You may remember I was doing a lot of Orset and Regal crossing. This was the one success. Now, it has grown absolutely wildly. It really is growing fast. Just a little bit of bloom beginning to butt through there. It's going to be at least another month before we see it. But, you know, it's a fingers crossed jobby, but it's a very vast plant, as you would expect, really, from a sort of, you know, unique type seedling taken from Orset, which does have a broader leaf. I'm trying to, there's an Orset standard that I'm growing. You can see that's got a nice dark shielded leaf to it. But this seedling seems to be plain green. Don't know, that's a good thing, probably not. But we'll have to see how that goes. But I don't know, I'm strangely not hopeful of that. I think that's just going to be a small, pretty basic, unique type bloom. But I'm hopeful that I'm going to be wrong. But there we are. Now, a couple of plants. We have a look down here. I had 2 huge plants. There's a copthorn and the Orset. The Orset that I actually used last year, which is actually potted up at the end of last season. These grew absolutely huge, and these were out to about here. I could barely walk through, and I made the decision to cut these back. and I can just actually whisk through showing that now. It was becoming frustrating because one of the issues that we can get at this time of year is that they continue to grow quite fast, but I was really struggling to get through the greenhouse here, and I made the decision in the end just to crop them back. But it's one of those things. I sort of got it up there. You can see me cropping it through. I'm speeding this through just so that you can see. I really did, you know, I got the knife in quite deep because I wanted to give this a bit of a crop back. It was also growing slightly one-sided, obviously towards the light, which was out basically towards the gangway of my sort of walkway here in the middle of the greenhouse. But yeah, so that was sort of cut back quite hard. Now, it will, of course, benefit the plant. It will enable the plant to bush out very well. And by the time I can get them outside in, say, about 5-6 weeks' time, they should be able to grow into really fine specimens outside. But the only minor problem we have with cutting back at this time of year is, of course, the fact that I'm going to delay the blooming of them. It's probably almost certainly going to push it well back into June now. I may get a few that sort of come through slightly earlier, but that's going to be the issue with cutting back sort of this late, if you like. But there we are, that's one of those things. Now, over here, I have got a whole job lot of my seedlings. These are all Regal seedlings. Sown last year, not yet to see the bloom on them, so hopefully some of them will come through and be able to look at those together as the time goes on and they start flowering. Everything, I've so little room in here now, it's almost becoming embarrassing. And one thing that I am going to have to address is up this end, because I've got an upper shelf here that I can barely even get to because I've got two giant sort of multi-stem standards here. One is Rosebud Supreme here, and this is my good old Adenjo Tinto Mara. And what I'm actually going to do now, I'm going to have to get these outside during the day. Over the next week, the forecast for night temperatures is really quite mild, so I've got no problem at all with putting these outside for now. They also are drinking a great deal at this point, so I'll obviously perhaps keep the watering of these a little bit limited outside because they may get a bit of water on them anyway. But I need to be able to get to this back shelf here, and it's becoming very difficult. So what I'm going to do now, I'm going to whiz through and show you me getting these outside. And we'll have a look to see me doing this. Hopefully I won't cause too much hassle, but we can see how this goes. So let's get going with it. What a relief it is to be able to get along now to that back shelf. Absolutely brilliant. I've also got a little bit of shelf space there. I mean, those two plants were taking up so much room. Now, I've just put outside, you saw there, to the glass house, right to the edge. they'll be fine. I mean, they're stacked in. They're not going to blow too much. The nights are going to be very mild, certainly for the next week. If there was, say, a particularly cold night forecast, I would just park them in on the glasshouse floor there. So they're not going to come to any harm. But I have just got to this time now where I just can't move in here. So moving those out has created a great deal more space for me, particularly up this end, where I can also park a few plants on the bench there, some of my standards as well, to give me a bit more bench space to spread my show plants out, which is ultimately what I'm wanting to do. So there we are. There's a few bits and pieces that are going on here with me at the moment. I'll be doing plenty of shorts up and coming, particularly when things do start to bloom. I will be putting shorts up of all of the blooms that come through, particularly plants that are new and that I've not seen the blooms of before. So that's all quite exciting. Also keep an eye on my unique there to see how that flowers. But in the meantime, if you're not subscribed, think about clicking that subscribe button. Doesn't cost you anything. Give it a like as well. Put your notifications on. And I'll hopefully see you all again very, very soon. Bye-bye for now.